Being a business owner, whether you are just starting out, a fledgling, or an experienced one who's been around the block, it can be a really, really lonely journey. If you're a solopreneur, you might be wearing many hats. If you're an ambitious business owner, you're still going to be wearing some hats. And it could be really tiresome when we're looking for all the solutions and we're trying to find all the answers that we need. And information overload is real. It can be really daunting in this ever-changing landscape that is business. That's why I created Conversations with, the playlist where I invite my go-to experts to talk about their or in their zone of genius, their area of expertise, so that you get the bite-sized training, the light bulb moments that you need. If we've not met before, my name is Lindsay Burden and I'm an intuitive, almost couldn't say that today, a business coach, inspire, guiding, motivating, and empowering my clients to create a wildly successful business and a time-rich lifestyle. But enough about me. I am super excited today. It's been a long time coming talking to Kirsty Northover, but before I give her a chance to talk about all things branding, I just want to share with you a little something about the lovely Kirsty. So Kirsty is the founder and owner of Brandcology, I'm struggling with my words today. I apologize. A boutique branding studio that combines the power of psychology with the art of sales and marketing to help you attract the clients you want to be working with. Good morning, Kirsty. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Good morning, Lindsay. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, before we get started, I'm wondering, do you want to share a little bit about your journey? Because I think that the journey is always really interesting and often gives us the insight into why you do what you do today.
Yeah, happily. So, my degree is in psychology, as you've just said. So, I'm all about people, why we do, what motivates us, etc. That's my jam. I love people. And I spent 25-ish years, saying that really quickly, working in sales and marketing in the pharmaceutical industry. So combining that sales and marketing and psychology is very much what I was doing as an account manager, feeding into the marketing departments, shaping the messages and who needed to hear what and why, and tailoring it to exactly what that end user needed to be able to solve their problems. So that's my background. And then when I had my son, for various things that were going on in life, I didn't go back to that, go back into that sort of industry. And I decided that I was going to shape my own future and I was going to be self-employed with absolutely no clue of what that would feel like or look like or how hard it would be. Because, ignorance really is bliss when you're taking that leap, I think, because none of us would ever do it if we had any idea how hard it was going to be. And I started off with pure photography, and it was newborns and families because I was in that mummy bubble back then. And I came out of the mummy bubble and my brain just needed to do what it did again. And personal branding photography found me. And it was this light bulb moment of, I can combine this with this and I can help usually female service-based business owners. And that's where it started, and it grew from that because people were struggling with web designers that just didn't get where they were coming from and what they needed, and they were being charged for things they didn't need, and it didn't feel right. And so I was ended up having to write briefs for web designers to then not quite execute it how we'd envisaged. And I thought, oh, for goodness sake, I'm just going to start doing it myself because I'm quite impatient.
That you do.
Yeah. And for a long time, I've been wanting to do brand design. And I think, like a lot of women, I just didn't quite let myself be brave enough to throw myself into that. Because what if I wasn't good enough? And what if someone else is better than me? And I had all of that going on. And I just threw myself into it and found myself a fabulous mentor who was as brilliant and inspiring as she was absolutely terrifying and exacting, which is exactly what I needed. And then my business became whole. It was the three pieces that us small business owners need to be able to get out there and attract the clients we need. So we've got the brand foundations and then the visuals of the website and photography to just magnetize people to us and draw them in.
I love that story. I'm not sure I even knew that you were in the pharmaceutical industry. I don't know how. Probably because when we get on a call, we don't often talk about business. All sorts of things come up. But today we will stay on track, everyone. I promise. Now, I always ask for a title. And I always say it's work in progress because we never quite know. But the title you came up with is Helping Your Ideal Clients. I am struggling. Let me try again. Helping your ideal clients choose you via perfectly aligned branding.
That wasn't
We,
snappy, was it? I clearly didn't have my A game on that day.
I think sometimes when I ask for that, no one does, and I come up with something, but later on, and probably will. But I think that the key thing here for us that we need to pick up is I just want to go branding. What on earth is it? Because I think there is a little bit of a preconception that logo. If you have a logo, your brand is done. So
Ah.
let's talk about what branding really is. And you've already alluded to it really when you were talking
Yeah.
about your journey. But what is branding,
Right.
Kirsty? Put us out of our misery, please.
Oh, it's not just a logo. So for me, the easiest way I can describe the purpose of branding anyway is that it's like a bridge that takes what we need our ideal clients to know about us, to think and feel about us, over the little bridge to the people that need to hear it. It's that link between the two. And the brand is the foundations of helping us feel right to that target audience. We all have instinctive reactions to something. And this might just be me, but if I'm Googling a service, a solution, it might be furniture, it might be a photographer, whatever, I will find a company quite often that I can't afford, but they just feel like the ones that I need to have. And I will justify logically my instinctive reaction to why it had to be them. And that's really what branding's about. It's not about conning someone into something that they don't want or need. It's about helping someone feel safe and understood and like they're going to get what they need from you. It's inspiring that trust.
I think that is the best explanation of branding I have ever heard. And I love this idea of the bridge. And all that you were talking about is that because we often use that build, know, like, and trust, which is what you've said, but in a much better way and a warm way. But that's what you're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah.
That connection. And that's, am I right in saying then that branding is how we make that connection with the person that we want to work with? But I love the way you took it the other way as well, how the person, our ideal client, it helps them to know that we are the perfect solution for them.
Yeah. I mean, for most of us, there are lots of competition, right? Other
Yeah.
people providing very similar services in an area that could serve our clients. So it's all about helping them choose the right person for them. And branding equally is gently and kindly and empathetically repelling people that really aren't right for us, and because that relationship wouldn't work, as much as it is attracting the right ones. We don't want to be working with clients that don't feel good about us and that we don't feel good about. And firing a client is the most awful, dreadful, uncomfortable thing ever for most of us. So let's just get the right ones in the first place. And yeah, that's what it's all about.
It's really interesting that you said that because I was going to use this piece at the end, but I think
Right.
I need to bring it in now. Because in the notes that I have here that you kindly provided me in advance, one of the things you said, if you're spending too much time on inquiry calls from the wrong clients for the wrong services, or new leads are few and far between, it's possible that the people you're perfect for don't know it yet.
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking about there,
It
because that
was.
repelling, because I so agree with you. I think it's too easy for us, particularly if you're at the beginning of your journey, to want to work with everybody. And we all do it at the beginning of our journey, but we certainly shouldn't be doing it later in our journey, because otherwise it sets that, we attract what we're working with already. And then it's really hard, isn't it, to up level? It's really hard to move across. And you had a fabulous story you were telling me about before I hit record. And I think that's that really great example of how
Okay.
it can be a challenge.
So, lots of the clients I work with DIY their beginnings because budgets, most of us don't start off with a huge vat of cash behind us, so we have to make choices about where we invest and where we don't. And that's getting us going and what we need, and there's never any judgment about that. And I've just finished a rebrand for the most fantastic lady, a contemporary garden designer, and she bootstrapped her beginning because she had to, and she has a portfolio of amazing projects. Her work's absolutely stunning. And she knew that to start getting the projects that she really wanted, that she knew she could deliver the heck out of, she wasn't getting them because her branding just didn't look really like she fit in that world. And that's that feel thing. Like, if a client in that world is looking at potential service providers, they are going to have an instinctive eye for brands that kind of align with ones they already know, like, and trust, right? There's this, even though everyone's logo, colors, etc., are different, there will be a commonality between them, whatever that category is. Tech has a similarity to it, doesn't it? High end home companies, for instance, there's a similar, you walk down Bond Street in London,
You're there.
you're there, you look at the frontage, and it's like, what you're going to see, don't you, in terms of like the logo. So there's that feel. And she was very, very, very aware that hers did not fit for the clientele that she was looking to work with next. She knew she could deliver. There was nothing there in terms of the skill gap. It was the perception of the value gap. And sticker shock, potentially, because she was going to be quoting for projects that were tens of thousands of pounds, and arguably her branding did not back up such a price ticket. So we've just been through the whole process of who are her ideal clients. I call them muses because I think that's more inspirational and less rigid.
Yeah, I love that.
And when I'm doing muses for my clients, they are real people. Their names, there's photos, there's some backstory, there's some lifestyle, we could talk about them as if they were best friends, because we need to know them that deeply to be able to market to them, which is what our branding is, right? So we created these muses that fit where she needed to start working. And it was so amazing. It didn't end up exactly where either of us thought it might at the beginning. We didn't
Interesting.
discuss what our individual perceptions were going to be, but we clearly both had one from that initial onboarding call. And at the end, we were just both so excited because we created this brand, which, when we aligned it with the mood boards of what these ideal clients needed, it fit perfectly whilst having her own really unique identity, which is of course important because it's about her. It's not about looking like someone else just to fit in. So there's a lot of jiggery pokery that goes on underneath to create that uniqueness that fits. But she is absolutely buzzing to now go and literally create some literature and go and knock on the door of one of these really high-end end-to-end sort of build companies that she wants to align with, and she's going to do it. So it's really exciting.
You've said there's a couple of things that are pinging around in my head. This journey, so my business is 11 years young, and I think I've been through 3 rebrands.
Yeah.
And I want people to know that where you start and where you might be today is potentially, most likely, probably different. And that's part of the journey.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly okay. And
I think it's better than okay.
oh,
Don't we all want to grow and evolve and become the best versions of ourselves? And if something's no longer serving us, isn't it healthy to leave it behind and focus on something new? Like, I think it's great.
I think what happens, and the client that you were talking about is a brilliant example of where she knew and recognized that the brand she had didn't align with where she
Yeah.
wanted to be working. I think often and I know from experience in my first couple of rebrands, it was like I almost felt I couldn't let go of what I had because that's what people knew. I couldn't let go of what I had because what would people think? And we get really stuck in this, what would people think? And upsetting other people. So,
I'm the biggest person for that actually as well. Like I always encourage people to not let that hold you back. And it's constantly buzzing around in my head. So none of us are immune to it. It's just what we do next, isn't it, really, I think.
so there is, what we're saying is it's okay to rebrand or
Yeah.
particularly if you're aligning yourself with the next level.
Yeah.
It's okay to rebrand if you feel that what you are today is very different from the beginning. And I would say, I think you mentioned that client was at sort of 2, 3 years. And I think that if I look back, every 2 to 3 a year, second year I'm like starting to not work, but the third year I know I've got to do something, and I think that's part of natural journey. It's not the same for everyone. It might be 4 or 5 years. So that I love, and that's what we're saying around this whole branding piece. But I want to come back to, we sort of touched on clients and it being about your clients, and I think it's really easy for us to forget what we're here for.
Hmm.
And there is a piece that I highlighted on your notes. It's about your ideal client. It's not about you. And I often think that's why we look at branding. And we might be able to give some tips here for people that are DIYing right now, for whatever reason. We can't pick the colors that we love just because we
No,
love
please
them.
don't do that.
So if somebody is that really, if they're DIYing right now, how do they ensure that they are making it about their ideal client and
Okay.
not about themselves?
So, firstly, be really kind to yourself because it's really, really hard to do that for yourself. And people can get really frustrated with, I don't know how to do this and I don't know who I'm talking about, and and get really stuck in that. And I think the advice I would give is either model pick the service that you most want to do to start off with. If you have more than one service, just pick one for clarity to start off with, because the more focused we become, the easier it is to answer questions. So primary service, whether that's because it's the most profitable or it's the one you enjoy the most or it fits your lifestyle the most, no judgment, just pick one. And then think about, if you've been doing that for a while, who was your absolute favorite client that you would clone and why? And then build a muse, as I would call a muse, an ideal client avatar around them. You can make changes because not every relationship's ever going to be perfect, but start with something you know, because then it's easier. If you haven't ever worked with your ideal client for your preferred service, think about someone you know in real life that would make an ideal client and why, and base it around them. You can call it a different name, you can change facts, but it just helps us think about them in a deeper way. So when you're building them out, you want to think about their personality, what their aspirations are, because you want to be able to align what they're looking for with where you can meet them, that bridge I was talking about. So if we can't know them deeply, we can't create those synergies. So we've got to be able to know them deeply. And that can be as simple as asking yourself questions such as, where do they shop? Now, on the surface, that's inane nonsense that doesn't mean anything. Who cares? What does that do for us? But for instance, If they shop in Waitrose rather than Aldi, all right, there might be something in there. Why do they shop in one over the other? It might be convenience because it's at the end of their street, or they might only sell, that might be the only place that sells their specific dietary requirement brands. Or it might be status or perceived something or other, right? So people make choices based on different reasons, and it's the different reasons that give us the gold. And you can then ask yourself, okay, if they choose Waitrose, would they also shop in Aldi? Because they're polar opposites in terms of branding. And if the answer is yes, what does that tell us about them? Same questions again. And if it's a no, what does that tell us about them? Because it can give us that beginnings of marketing messages and which brands we're aligning with and why. So you just go through it with what they drive, where they shop, schooling options maybe, where they holiday, where they eat out, what they dress, what they buy in terms of shoes or sportswear or whatever it is that's relevant to that person. Dive into it and just start sucking stuff out. And you can create a little mood board then in terms of the brands that they do align with, and you can see what they look like visually so that you can get a sense of where yours needs to fit
within that.
whilst being uniquely you. Like, when there's no point in copying anyone, because that's the opposite of trying to attract our clients. You're attracting someone else's. But it gives you a starting point rather than this blank sheet or screen in front of you without a clue where to begin.
It's really interesting listening to you because there's a couple of things that are just pinging in my head, and it always happens when I have these chats with my go-to experts. I'm like, oh, I really need to check that, because I was thinking I've been sort of narrowing my focus on my offering because I felt like it was a little bit too broad. And yes, I could talk very generally, but actually the way I was talking was there was a stronger connection to one offering. So I actually dumped the other one. I know, right. But then you were also talking about supermarkets. By the way, other supermarkets are available. And
Sorry,
I've
everyone.
and I've always steered away from that. Where do they go? What do they do? Da 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 da. Because it just didn't connect with me, and I really
Doesn't.
struggled for years. Is buyer persona and avatar and everything. I was like, I don't really care what they drink, what they drive, and everything
Yeah, yeah.
else. And I always went that, so I sort of cut that piece out and went deeper. Who are they? What's important to them? But I can see now actually that I'm going to go back to my 5-star awesome client, as I like to call them, and the piece that I've created around that. Because how you've described it, I can see how understanding those pieces helps you understand your potential client more deeply, which is what you were talking about, and you actually had in your notes about the importance of that. So while I kind of do it a slightly different way, I'm going to go back to that piece to see what golden nuggets are there, because I
Yeah.
loved what you were saying there, and and I think what I loved most about what you were saying as well is like they might shop here. And we were using Waitrose as an example. They might shop at Aldi, or they might shop at both, and why? And I was like, yeah, because I think everyone shops everywhere now. So what? But you sort of kept asking those questions. I was like, okay, I can see how you just dig a little deeper, dig a little deeper. So while I have created my awesome 5-star client, and have it written down and have really connected with them, I want to go back and do that little piece of work. And even if I'm just thinking about it when I'm walking around those shops, because I think
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. There are some real golden nuggets in there.
There are. I mean, I think I have to say, I think your branding is so on point for what you do, who you are, and who you work with. So I genuinely don't think you're going to come up with anything that's going to change that for you. But the one thing I come across the most when I'm talking to business owners, because most of us are solopreneurs, for want of a better word, and there is this inherent fear that if I am targeting these ideal clients, these muses, these 5-star clients, I might not be getting inquiries from other people, and I've got bills to pay. I can't afford to be that fussy. I just want to help everyone because then I'm not going to be turning anyone away. And the challenge with trying to appeal to everyone is that you're kind of going to appeal to no one because it's so generic. You're just not going to cut through the noise of everyone else trying to appeal to everyone also. And I don't know if you've seen Shrek.
I have. I love Shrek.
So I'm sorry, I'm a bit random. But you've got Donkey and Shrek talking to each other, and you know the onion analogy? And he's like, you're like an onion, you've got layers. And I think of the branding in a really weird way is you've got the center of the onion, the bit that makes you cry when you're cutting into it, right? Now, I'm not suggesting we cut into our clients in any way, but it's that bit that really gets you in the feels, isn't it? In the middle of the onion. And that's where our muses sit. They're the bullseye. And we've still got these layers which the next layer out is still going to get our messaging and they're still going to be attracted to us. Maybe not in the same intensity, but they're still going to pick up elements and out and out and out. So it's not that we're doing ourselves a disservice by being tailored. It's that we're really getting those perfect people drawn to us because they're the ones that are going to be delighted and happy dancing from working with us and become our greatest advocates, therefore our marketing team, which is amazing. But we're not necessarily not also going to attract the people where they're similar but not quite that, because they're still going to be affected by that ripple. So yeah, now you've got Shrek and the onion analogy in your head. Sorry about that.
I'm liking it, and I love a bit of Shrek. It's really interesting that you talk about that, and I see that fear. But if I only talk to this client, I'm going to miss out, and actually you won't. And I've been used as an example many times in networking, because until very, very recently, my marketing was totally aimed at women. Yeah, at that time I was working with 3 men. So it didn't stop me attracting those 3 men, and they still fitted my ideal 5-star client
Mhm.
in so many ways, from
Yeah.
an emotional connection, what's important to them, etc. They just happened to be men.
Yeah.
So
I
it
work with
does,
men also, and it's the same.
yeah.
It's an energy thing, it's a personality thing, it's a value thing. Yeah, the gender then becomes secondary,
Yes.
but yeah.
Although I have had to tweak it slightly, because I'm just networking now in a group with so many incredible men. I'm like, oh, okay. And that's the other thing. I think it's okay to change just a little bit. So for me, it's just tiny little tweaks. I've only got to remove the word woman, and suddenly, it's still the same message. It's just removing one word. And you talked about that, and I do want to come to that. And you've already alluded to it a little bit. But one of the points that you had written down for me and you want to get across is be brave, own your messaging, and live your proposition. And I just wanted to really touch on that, particularly that piece, live your proposition, and sort of explore that a little bit more and what that means.
Yeah, I think it can be really, really hard to have the confidence to get ourselves out there and to actually be bold about what we are capable of and who we can help and what their outcomes will be from working with us. And I'm as guilty as the next person for perhaps having shied away from that level of boldness up until perhaps quite recently, if I'm honest. And I've now been doing this for, I don't know, 9 years or so. So this isn't something that we get overnight, but part of our personal brands, or any brand actually, but I'm assuming we're talking about reasonably sort of personal ones, is having it to showcase the best of us and our values and our abilities and where we align. So it has to be, and I hate this word authentic because I think that word's overused and it's just a bit meh now. Um, but just keeping ourselves working at that level even when we're lacking confidence in ourselves, because that next client's always around the corner that's going to give us all of our confidence back again and make us re-aware, is that even a word, of what
We'll
we
take
do
it.
and why.
Yeah.
And if we don't just keep showing up, however that is, whether it's networking, whether it's online, however we show up, we just need to keep with it. And even when we're not feeling it, find a way to keep living our brand values, I think, and not be, it's also about not being afraid to turn down opportunities that really aren't right for you and that can take you off piste and away from your brand, because that can lessen the likelihood that the right person is going to choose you, because you've then ended up down a bit of a rabbit warren, which wasn't ever where you belonged.
And it devalues your service and it devalues you. And it's quite, I love what you're saying there. And for me, I think the message that I'm getting here is your brand isn't just, I'll mention that terrible word, logo. It isn't just your logo, your website, your products, whether it's PDFs or, whatever, your digital assets. It's not just all of those things. It's you. So when done really, really well, that's what makes that bridge that you were talking about at the beginning so strong and so powerful.
It is. I mean, I did a training day on Wednesday for a group of new celebrants who were being introduced to how to create a brand. It's quite a saturated market, and how do they, for lots of them, and how do they create a brand that's going to attract their ideal clients? Exactly what we're talking about today. So I've been through all of this on a whole day, and lost my thread. Remind me, what were we talking about?
So
Oh,
I
about
was,
the us thing.
see, knew we'd come back. Thank God we came back, because I'm like, in my head was like, oh my goodness, where were we going?
Where was I going with that? Do that all the time. And it does, we are at the core naturally of all of it. And our logo is important because it's a visual representation of some of these messages and themes and values, but it's a piece of the puzzle. And I found that certainly with there's maybe a certain age group, demographic background where everything has to be thrown at the logo to give it as much information as possible, and it's a bit overwhelming and a bit busy and a bit like, whoa, I can't compute all of this. And it's having that confidence to take a step back sometimes and say less is more, and have the confidence that distilling some of the messages into that aspect of your logo, because fonts have so much personality, the way that they're treated in terms of the size versus the space around them, etc., says so much. Then you've got colours, which give a whole other layer of meaning. And then, of course, you've got your website and your imagery, and together they can tell this huge story. And each one piece doesn't have to, probably can't, tell all of it. And it's just weaving yourself through all of it, but the self that's relevant to your clients. Like, there's part of my personality that is not remotely relevant to the clients I work with, because it's the bonkers mummy part of me, and the dog mummy
I
part
love
of
the
me. And
bonkers mummy part of you and the dog walker part of you.
I mean, it comes across in my relationships with my clients, but it's not part of my initial branding, because my clients come to me via Google or networking referrals because they don't have sales and marketing expertise, and they need that help to get their brand to a level where their ideal clients know that they can serve them. That's why they come to me. But then we have an inquiry call, and then it becomes a personality fit. Do we get each other? Can we work together? Are we excited by this? And if it's yes, we work together. And I've got to the stage now where my website tends to filter out people that aren't going to be that right fit. So I tend to only get inquiry calls now from people that kind of want to book in because they've already self-selected. But that took a long time to get there. It doesn't happen overnight.
Now, because you've mentioned your website and because you've mentioned the incredible clients that you like to work with, anyone listening or watching right now, what is the easiest way for them to find you and get in touch with you?
My website, quite naturally. So my website's brandcology.co.uk, and on there are all of my services with all of my pricing, because transparency is so important. And you can also book an inquiry call with me.
That is awesome. And I will make sure that those links are below the video here. I don't know why I did that, but I feel like I should be down with the kids today.
That's been happening a lot in my photo shoots
That's a
recently.
I tried to do it in a photo shoot. I didn't do it very well because it just felt really false. I can do it like that, down below, like that, down below
Yeah.
this video, find the links. I can do it in a video. In a photo, I just feel like I'm pretending to be somebody I'm not.
And I think that's really, really, really important. And if something doesn't feel right, and it's not just because we're scared, it's because it's just not us, it's better not to do it.
It just looked like some weirdo pointing. Anyway, enough about me looking weird. Thank you so much, Kirsty, for joining me today. I truly believe that you have given us a new way to think about branding that will really help people understand that journey, the importance of their customer, and understanding that customer and giving them a real insight, particularly into how you work. So I hope that people will visit your website and get in touch because you
Amazing.
are incredible. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks, darling. Thanks for having me.